first step of recreating the impossible C is to hand draw this base shape. So we're going to use our base shape template to do that. So let's head over to File, Open. Click on that base shape and open it on up. All right, so all we have to do is use our pen tool to follow these lines. That's easy enough. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I hit Z for zoom, and I can use my magnifying glass to zoom in and out. Now, two things that you want to have open, and I'm going to go ahead and close them out for just a second so I can tell you how to find them if you've accidentally lost them. We need to have our layers palette, because you should always have your layers palette open when you're working in Photoshop. And we're going to be working with the Paths palette, which is a really amazing palette that doesn't get enough love. So let's drop down here. Remember, anytime that you lose a palette, it's like you tossed it out the window. So we're going to go to Window and drop down to Layers. Just look out your window. There it is. Ah, nice. I'm going to click, hold, and drag and put this back where it was, up here in this side. And then I'm going to go back to the window and open my Paths palette. And normally the layers, channels, and paths come in together, grouped together. So I'm going to click that paths and just kind of pull it out here because I want you to see what's happening in it. All right, so now that we're all set up, we've got our layers, we've got our paths, and we've got our template. Now let's get down to business. We're going to hit P for pen, and that's going to automatically pull our pen tool out of the toolbox. And the pen tool's a little scary the first time you use it, but today we're not going to do any scary stuff with it. We're just going to create straight lines. So there are 4 pieces here that we want to trace. We've got kind of an L here, a 7 here, kind of an L on its side here, and then we've got the bar base across the bottom. And we're going to make each one of those a different chunk of color by the time we're done. I'm going to start in this top corner, and I'm just going to click. When I click, it lays down my anchor point, and I'm going to follow this L all the way around. So come here, click, 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 and I'm going to come back to the original point, anchor point, and I can see that my cursor has turned into a little circle. That means I'm closing the path. So I have now just created a shape. I can look in my Paths palette and, oh look, there's a little L in there in the Paths palette. That's great. So I'm going to double click on it where it says Work Path, and I'm going to give this a name, and I'm going to call this Top. When I give it a name, it will stay permanently in this Paths palette. Now that's very important because what this is actually a selection, just like one you would create with your magic wand, your lasso tool, any of your marquee tools. It's just a selection, but it's just a really smart one. Now we're going to go ahead and create a new path, because if I start creating another path on this same layer, then these anchor points might get corrupted. So I'm just going to come down to the bottom of my Paths palette, just like I would in my Layers palette, and hit the plus sign to create a new path. I'm going to start right here in the corner, and now I'm going to trace this 7 looking thing on the side. I'm going to click, 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 and come back to the beginning, look for the little circle and click. So now that I've got that one done, I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to call this one Side. All right, let's create a new path by clicking on the plus sign. I'm going to start in this corner here, click, and just follow it down. Click. When you click to click here with the pen tool, you get straight lines. It's when you click, hold, and drag is when you start getting curves, and those are called Bezier curves, but we're not going to deal with those today. I'm coming back to the beginning where the cursor turns into a little circle, and we're going to close out that path into a shape, and then we're going to rename it. We're going to call this one Front. Then we've got one more to go. Instead of using the scrolly bars on the side and the bottom, I can just hold down my Shift key and my little grabby hand, not my Shift, my space bar, and move this around wherever I want to. Okay, let's create one more new path. I'm going to click the plus sign at the bottom, and we are going to start in the corner here, and just click, 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 click a little bit more, 2 more clicks, and we are done. So we'll call this one, double clicking here to rename it, we'll call it base. Now that we have these 4 pieces, I said that these were selections, but they're also called paths. Well, a path is just a very smart selection, and it can do several different things. If I click on this path that I've created, my top path becomes visible again, and I can use this for several different things. If I use the bottom of my path palette, I have a lot of little buttons down here. I can create a selection very quickly by clicking on the selection button. Now you can see I have my magic ants. So if I had to make the selection several times, I wouldn't want to have to go through that with my pen every single time. I would just want to do it one time, save it in my path palette, and now I can call up that selection whenever I need it. And we'll see how helpful this is as we move along later. So right now I'm going to Control D to deselect the ants. And I'm going to show you something else that this path palette can do. I'm going to click my top path again, and then I have a couple other buttons down here. This button right here will actually stroke the path. That just means it'll put an outline of color on whatever I've drawn. But we also know that vectors have fills. And because we have created this path as a vector, I can fill this path as well with color. Now, let's pick our color first before we hit the button. Actually, let's go ahead and hit the button. I'll show you what happens. How cool is that? It just automatically fills. I'm going to hit Control Z to take that color out. And then we're going to go choose the color that we want in there. So I'm going to double click right here on my foreground color. And I know the exact color that I want to use in hex code. So it is 498896. And that's going to give me a nice dark, deep, muted blue. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm on that top layer, on that top path. But if I hit this button right now, it's going to put the ink on my background layer. I don't want that. I want this on a separate layer because whenever I'm done with my impossible shape, I need to get rid of that background layer altogether. I don't want it to be seen. Now, if you see, I'm over here clicking on my little eyeball, but it's not disappearing, and that's because my background is locked. So to unlock the background, I'm going to double click, and I'm just going to tell it OK. And now this is a layer that we can turn on and off. Now again, we're going to turn this layer off when we're done, but we want to create our color in a new layer. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of my layers palette and hit the plus sign. So I have a new blank layer. You can also go to layer, new layer, or you can use Control Shift in, Command Shift in on a Mac. So now that we have this new layer, when I have this path selected and I hit this button, it is going to fill it with whatever this color is. So layer, path, button. There we go. Now I'm going to do my side color. So I'm going to select that side. I'm going to change the color. And for my side color, I want to use 5C9EBF. It's going to be a brighter blue. I'm going to hit OK. Now that that color is showing up here, all I have to do is hit my fill button on my path, and it will automatically fill that section. Look how beautifully this is coming together. We're going to repeat that process. Go to the front path, choose a color. For our front side, we'll go with 4B959A. That's going to give us more of a teal color. And I'm going to hit that fill button. And then we have one piece left, the base piece. So I'm going to click on base, and we want our base to be super light. So we're going to use CF, DF, DE. We'll hit OK. And then we'll hit our fill button. Look at that. So now, whenever I turn off my layer 0, my impossible shape is ready to go.